who is an assistant professor at the Department of Computer Science and Operations Research at the University of Montreal. She's also core member of Canada and Canada CIFAR AI chair. Sorry, also Mila, Quebec Artificial Intelligence Institute, and as if that wasn't enough, she's also a research scientist at DeepMind. Aishwarya is going to present a talk entitled Advancing Multimodal Vision Language Learning, and we are just setting her up. Are we good? Over to you. Please welcome her to the stage.
Hello, testing. All right, am I audible? I guess I am. Hi, everyone. So today I'm going to tell you about multimodal vision and language AI research, what progress we have made in this field until now, and specifically what are the challenges that we are yet to tackle. So this is the research group that I lead at Mila in university. These are my amazing students. I think some of them are here today in case you wanted to chat with them about their research. All right, so what is vision and language research? By the way, how many of you know about vision and language research? Just a raise of hands. All right, some people. Okay, so for those who are not familiar, I will highlight some of the tasks or problems that we build AI systems for to tackle vision and language research. So one of the common tasks in vision and language is called image captioning, which is basically the task of AI system describing an image in natural language sentence. So for example, here, a group of young people playing a game of frisbee is a valid description for this image. Another very common task is visual question answering, where an AI system is given an image and a question about the image, and the task for the system is to answer the question in free-form natural language. So here you can see what is the mustache made of, that is the question, and the answer is supposed to be bananas. So by the way, this is the task that I worked extensively on during my PhD. Another common task is image retrieval, where given a natural language description, such as a gray-haired man in black and yellow tie, and given a pool of images, the task for the system is to retrieve the image that is best described by the given sentence. Yet another task is image generation. This is something that you guys might have seen recently by models like DALL-E, where the task is given a natural language description, gray-haired man in black and yellow tie again. Now the system not just needs to retrieve an image, but generate the image pixel by pixel. So among all of these tasks, one common characteristic is all of these tasks require joint understanding of two modalities, the vision modality and the textual modality. So the textual modality here is natural language, particularly English sentences, right? And that is called multimodal vision and language research, where we need to jointly understand vision and language. So you might wonder, why is this research area even important in the first place, right? Why do I care about this? So there are multiple ways to motivate this. First of all, it is very intuitive that we build our AI systems in multimodal settings, just as we humans learn in multimodal settings, right? As we grow up, we see different kinds of modalities around us, vision, touch, audio, and text, and so on. So why not build AI systems in the same pattern? Secondly, there are a lot of useful applications for these vision and language systems. For example, they can serve as an aid for visually impaired users, because they can ask questions such as, hey, can you tell me what temperature is my oven set to? That's just an example. They are also useful for online shopping and organizing photos, because now with these agents, we can ask free-form natural language queries. For example, can you find me a picture where I was wearing this yellow shirt in this conference? They can also serve as grounded virtual assistants. So for example, imagine having Alexa, but Alexa with eyes. So you can ask questions such as, hey Alexa, have you seen where I left my keys, right? But to me, the biggest motivation to work in this field comes from the numerous scientific challenges that are involved in working on vision and language research. So this research requires dealing with visual recognition, being able to understand the contents of an image. It requires dealing with language understanding, being able to understand the meaning of a sentence, and also language generation. Combining information across modalities. So vision and language are inherently very different modalities. Vision is more perceptual, whereas language is very, very abstract, right? It's built by human beings. So combining information across modalities tends to be challenging. They also involve compositional reasoning challenges. So reasoning about new compositions, for example, new compositions of words, new compositions of pixels, which we as humans are very good at. And also common sense and factual knowledge reasoning. Okay, so with that, where do we stand as of today in terms of vision and language research, right? What is the state of things? How does that look like? So here I'm showing you an output from a recent model published by DeepMind called Flamingo. By the way, I work at DeepMind as well, but I was not part of this research, just to make it clear. So this is a really impressive system that DeepMind published. So here what I'm showing you is an image that is fed to this model called Flamingo. And then what you see, the text conversation that you see is a dialogue between the agent, the Flamingo agent, and a human. So as soon as we show the picture, the model generates a caption saying, this is a dog, it's a white fluffy dog. A human asks, what season is this? Model says, it looks like a summer day. Why do you think so? The grass is green and the dog is not wearing a sweater, right? So you can read this and you can get a sense that this system is good at understanding the contents of the image, understanding the written language, also generating language, and also doing some sort of common sense reasoning. For example, it knows that in winter we wear sweaters. So this is really impressive, right? But let me just tell you how much time it took for us as a community to reach this point. So here what I'm showing you is basically the performance of challenge-winning entries in this challenge called VQA challenge. So me and my colleagues, we used to organize visual question answering challenge every year. And here I'm showing you the best performing models performance every year. So basically, when we started the challenge back in 2015, when we released the VQA dataset, the performance of the best models was only 55% at that point. And now you can see that the performance has reached 84%. So it's just sheer amount of progress that we have made as a community over the past 8 years or so. And you can see the human performance line as well, and the model performance has actually surpassed human performance. So that's a lot to say that we are now beating human performance on this task of answering questions about images, right? Okay, but what I want to talk about here today is, in spite of all this progress, there are a lot of challenges that are yet to be tackled that prevent us from actually surpassing human performance. So the plot that you saw is actually not the full picture. It's just surpassing the human performance on one data set. And I'll tell you about my next project, where it turns out that if you evaluate on a different data set, the models perform poorly. So I'm particularly going to talk about two challenges which we have recently studied. The first one is the challenge of out-of-distribution generalization. So this is a work that I did with my colleagues at DeepMind, and the work is going to be presented at EACL this summer. So here, as I said, what we did was, instead of evaluating the models on the same distribution that they are trained on, we evaluated the models on a different data set. So this is called zero-shot evaluation. You can also call it out-of-distribution evaluation, and so on. So we have 4 different data sets here. The one on the left, VQA V2, is the most common data set that people evaluate on. The progress plot I showed was on this data set. And then we included, these data sets are existing data sets. We just evaluated on them. So here we have 4 different VQA data sets. All of them require the same kind of capability to be able to answer questions about images, right? But they are different from each other in certain ways. So for example, the visvis data set on the right has images collected by visually impaired users. So you can see the images might not be of that high quality, the object of interest might not be in the center, and the question might be more conversational like, for example, please fully describe blah, blah, blah. So we wanted to see that these recent models, which seem to have outperformed humans on this VQA-V2 data set, how well do they perform when I do not train them, when I do not fine-tune them on the target data set? So we evaluated these two models, which were state-of-the-art at that point. Now this field is progressing so fast, state-of-the-art improves almost every month. So these are, by the way, I'm not going to go into the details of their architecture. That's not the point of the study. But just wanted to say that these are all transformer-based models trained on lots of image and text data. OK, so here what we are looking at is on the x-axis, I am showing you the data set on which I'm evaluating these models. And this bar tells me the IID performance, as in what is the performance on this data set if this model was trained on the training split of the same distribution, right? So that performance is pretty good. But if you train it on a different data set, the performance drops by quite a bit, right? So all the other colors are showing you the OOD performance. So the bold numbers are IID performance, non-bold numbers are OOD, out of distribution performance. And the same applies to all the other data sets as well. So the main takeaway from this study was there is a large drop in the performance of these models when evaluated in OOD settings. So we tried to analyze why the models are showing poor performance. And we found that they are not really good in terms of their reasoning skills. So they are not good at, for example, spatial reasoning, compositional reasoning, logical reasoning. They overfit to answer priors. So for example, if helmet is the more common answer to the question, what is skateboarder wearing to protect his head, these models tend to answer helmet even when there is even when the skateboarder is not wearing helmet. So they tend to overfit to the answer priors. And another interesting finding was they also tend to overfit to the question format. So for example, in one data set, the questions about animal are phrased as what animal, blah, 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 what kind of animal, blah, blah, blah. And then I evaluate it on a different data set where the question is phrased in a different form. For example, who is holding the leash? Who is on the leash? What is on the leash? Who is playing frisbee, etc. The answers are still about animals, dogs. But because the format in which the questions are asked, there is a huge drop in the performance of these models. All right, so we basically found that these models are far from beating human performance because they are not as robust as us humans in terms of generalizing to new distributions. Yet another challenge is how can we adapt these models to new tasks in a data-efficient manner? So imagine you have a model that can do image captioning, and you want to adapt it to answer questions about images, to do visual question answering, but just with a few examples, right? It should not need you a lot of examples to adapt these models to do question answering because it already knows about images, language, the connection between them, and so on. So what we would like to use here is basically capabilities of pre-trained large language models like GPT-3, because GPT-3 kind of models have shown to be good at learning new tasks with just few examples. So what we are asking here is, can we use such large language models for vision and language tasks, for multimodal tasks? So this is a work, I'm sorry about the logo being displaced. So this is a work led by two of my students and some collaborators, again going to be published presented at EACL. So here in the blue box, you are seeing a large language model like GPT-3. We use GPT-J, that is open source. And in the green box, you see a vision model that takes an image and gives you visual features. So what we would like to do here is to learn a mapping network. So this orange arrow in the middle that you see, a mapping network that can take the output of the vision encoder and transform it to a space that my language model can understand, right? Language model cannot understand images. It can only understand language. So what we do here, so we want to learn this kind of mapping to go from vision representation space to a language representation space. And by the way, we are not the first ones to do this. There were other existing approaches at that time. But the kind of techniques they used would involve a lot of parameters to train. They would either fine-tune the whole model, insert adapter layers in the language model, or learn the vision encoder from scratch. And as a result, they would involve a large number of trainable parameters, and they have some other issues. So what we proposed is keeping the vision model and the language model frozen. So we are using pre-trained vision model, pre-trained language model. We are keeping them frozen. And we are just learning this lightweight mapping network in between from vision to language. And as a result, we have orders of magnitude fewer parameters compared to the previous approaches. Our method can be trained in just a few hours. It uses modest resources and public data sets. And it is very modular, as in you can plug in a better vision model, plug in a better language model, and so on. So at a high level, the approach looks like this. I'm showing you the training setup. So we train this on pairs of images and captions. So given an image, the vision encoder extracts visual features. Given a caption, the language model encodes the caption. And we learned this mapping network that takes those visual features and maps it to the embedding space of the language model. And only the mapping network is the trainable component. We adopted some techniques to make it parameter efficient, such as dimensionality bottleneck, shared projection layers, learned constant embeddings. So this is how the system looks like at inference time. Given an image, it can generate a caption. The interesting thing is, it has never seen examples of visual question answering, right? It has only been trained for image captioning. But now, if you just show a few examples, it can do visual question answering as well. So now it can adapt to a new task with very, very few examples. So these are the results. I mean, you can check out the paper, but as you can expect, we outperform existing methods with much fewer parameters, and it's more effective in low data settings. So I would like to also mention that the Flamingo model that I talked about earlier is actually a very similar kind of approach, but it is trained on much, much more data with many, many more parameters. So it obviously performs better than our approach. But the benefit of our approach is if you are in limited resource setting, you can use this for vision and language adaptation. So these are some qualitative results. It is not perfect. It fails to identify frisbee. It confuses frisbee with soccer and so on. But it's a step in the right direction. All right, so those were the challenges that I talked about, and we took some steps for each of these to improve upon, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Aishwarya. I think we have time just about for one question. So do we have hands in the air? I can see just in the middle section here, ladies sort of right in the middle, actually. Yeah, there we go. Coming your way. And if we could keep the question and the answer somewhat brief, not to rush you.
Hello, first of all, thanks for your talk. Very insightful. So I'm aware that these big models, you should use some techniques to make the training and inference process more efficient. So I was wondering what type of techniques or approaches you use to achieve that.
Yeah, so I think there are lots of different kinds of approaches. So in order to improve the training, some of these, like I talked about, briefly mentioned adapter-based approaches, where you basically add some new parameters to your big model and only train those parameters. We did not do that. We actually just learned this mapping between the two models that we were trying to bridge the connection between. Inference time, a lot of these models are now good at just, so you can do inference very quickly with just by showing some examples, and they can learn on the fly. So inference is, I mean, it's fast anyways.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for telling us all about your work. Please put your hands together for Aishwarya Agrawal. And we should move on. I can start the introduction for our next speaker. I mean, many of you will have seen our next speaker on a panel yesterday where they're examining the opportunities and the limitations around generative AI, which has obviously been a very hot topic over the last couple of days. We are delighted to have him back today. Today he's presenting on the topic of challenges and opportunities for keeping AI open. So This is a widely recognized speaker on AI. He's published over 20 research